And suddenly a multitude of the heavenly host was with the angel, praising God. We have just sung something of that praise, for from the earliest times it is echoed in the liturgy of the Church with the Gloria. I would like to reflect on this vicinity, this closeness of the other realm to us this night, and in general, for we do not see all that surrounds us normally. Some have. And there is a close link between what we're doing now, not only this night, but in general, and Bethlehem. Why? That inbreaking of the divine is present at each Mass, and therefore also the whole court of heaven is there. Remember that every time you come to the Holy Sacrifice, this is Bethlehem and Calvary, all right there. Angels. If one does peruse now and again the lives of certain saints, one will find, yes, they do come and go. Occasionally they come into our lives, for instance, accidents where we should really be in trouble, but they stop it. Normally, however, they're very discreet, but they are really there. In the monastic life, they become a great reality. In a house where there is only God, one becomes aware that this is the reality. When one comes to a place where the Blessed Sacrament is, one senses there's a great throng right here. It has happened more than once in the Hermitage that angels have been heard to sing. Now this is not surprising when one thinks actually that in our faith we're not handling the human. Do you know that the devil also is an angel? He, at Loreto recently, spoke in an exorcism, and obliged, he was against his will admitting certain things. He admitted it was the place where all this took place, and he used the phrase, "My brother Gabriel was here." Now that means that he was of the same seraphic order and choir. It was the top. Do you realize, therefore, the hatred that he has for God and for us who are taking his place? Do you realize the difference between an angel and your soul? Because Lucifer knew what he was doing, it was irreversible. We still have another chance as long as we're alive. And on this night, it started to be put right. I want to take you, however, into a whole realm which we're not aware of fully, but in the old rite we're slightly more aware of. It's the fact that we're doing the very same thing that millions of people have done in 2 millennia. Essentially the same rite of the martyrs, right back to the period of Gregory the Great. At the end, we say, bending our knee, and the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us precisely. That has been put there by instinct at the moment when we ourselves are like the Blessed Virgin, Bethlehem, the house of bread that contains the Son of God. At my hermitage, I have a big picture of our local saint who was at that point at the altar in secret caught. And because he was a priest, he was hanged, drawn and quartered a few weeks later at Tyburn on the 10th of December 1610. He died because he knew the difference between what we have and what was being lost. Therefore, do you realize the massive difference between what we're doing here and what might be happening elsewhere in the Christian family? It's not the same to create a good atmosphere, even to pray with all one's heart, to sing beautifully, if that presence is not there. If one looks carefully at the documents coming out of the Reformation, one sees that every word in the old liturgy of the Church was deliberately watered down and made ambiguous when it came to England. And deliberately, all clear reference to that presence was taken away. And therefore, what they have is a memorial service. We have Bethlehem, the real thing. Now, this has been worth dying for and being tortured for. Father Gerard, a Jesuit, an underground Jesuit, was also caught and put to the torture. He has, in the diary that survived, great detail about the torture. All he had to do was say what they wanted to know. But no, torture and rack, rather than give in. Rather than hand on precisely this great treasure that we have on earth, the real presence. Later in time, in France, something similar was going on massively. Torture, prison, and the guillotine. It happened on Christmas night in the Terreur, that as in the Tower of London, so also in Paris, with tiny chalices, they were able to celebrate in secret their last consolation before martyrdom. One time, a priest just ordained, a young priest therefore, was celebrating in Paris under duress, in secret. And as he was doing so, somebody was being taken out, and with a great mob around, he was eventually guillotined, just as he was coming to the Agnus Dei in secret. He heard it all. Some years ago, before the changes this was, a young priest, just ordained, came to Downside Abbey for a retreat. He wanted, therefore, to celebrate quietly, and he asked for an altar at Christmas night. Now, in those days, every priest celebrated, and all the altars were taken. But the good sacristan said, well, there's one actually left. I'll give you quickly this chalice. Go to that corner there, there's a little altar, and God bless you. And as he was celebrating, as he started to get to the offertory, he heard while he was at the altar a horrible cry of people, a mob, a throng, shouting and insulting. It got louder and louder, and he carried on regardless because he couldn't stop. He hadn't a clue what was going on until he got to the Agnus Dei in his secret mass, and suddenly it all stopped. What on earth was that? Eventually he got back to his room, and the following morning the good sacristan, himself a monk, asked him, "How'd you get on, Father?" "Well, actually, I had a very strange experience." "What was that?" And he told him exactly what happened. And the good sacristan, with a twinkle in his eye, explained, "Well, actually, Father, I didn't tell you everything. The chalice I gave you was the persecution chalice, hence its tiny size. And this was used in Terreur by a young priest just ordained before being guillotined. And we have it here in our little Benedictine family, this heirloom. And we know that every young priest who celebrates his first Christmas Mass with this chalice hears it. I was in Downside some years ago and I asked about it. They said, yes, it's in the strong room. Before being ordained, I was told about it by the Benedictine I knew well, and they wanted me to test it, but I couldn't get back from Rome. However, I am sure that there it would have happened. Why am I sure? Because the frontier, my friends, between heaven and earth is very, very thin, and that the altar hardly exists. We are treading in another land. We are surrounded by other beings. What we have is not the happy-clappy, not the noisy and the human. We have heaven. And the language of heaven, my friend, is utter silence. Bless these little infant Jesus for the children, if any children around. God bless these and make them a reminder of the incarnation. God bless the little children and their families. Amen.